Good morning, everybody. How are you? Good morning from a very dreary north of Scotland, and good morning to you, Ben.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. We thought we'd have another really lovely welcome to you all and have a few reflections of yesterday and also think about the day ahead. So we'll probably do this for about 25 minutes or so, depending on how much we babble away, and then it'll be over to you guys. So firstly, I just want to say, we couldn't be more thrilled with your participation, the comments that are coming through, the one-to-one sessions that we've had. It has been inspirational from us to hear from you as well. So I also appreciate that some people couldn't join day 2 today. So this is obviously going to be recorded and you'll be able to watch the replay in the course. So without further ado, I'm going to have a little summary of some of our reflections from yesterday. So Ben, over to you. What were some of your reflections from yesterday?
Yeah, I think obviously the discussion points that came up were really interesting, kind of getting more of a sense of how people found the course and kind of where it fits in with their current situation. And actually there was some clear impacts of COVID that have affected many of you that are doing the course. And one of the things that obviously the critical engineer referenced when we've been previously doing work on it is that kind of adapting to change. And obviously the last 12 months has really accelerated. It's thrust people into situations where they've had to. It's nice to see that in a number of cases, the comments suggest that this has given people a bit of impetus to kind of reflect on the value that they have, the skill sets that they have, and the ones that they can build, and hopefully, kind of has been a sort of showcasing that it's worth being resilient even in these trying times. So that was definitely interesting, and one of my own reflections, the skills situation, and obviously this whole project is born out of a reflection on skills, but COVID's really accelerated the need to look at that. And I think whether you're a 16-year-old whose exams evaporated, or whether you're a 60-year-old who's suddenly sort of having to reevaluate their career options, hopefully there's I think there's a big conversation to be had around that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think for me, it was great to hear the feedback and that this was useful for everybody. And also that we could tweak today a little bit to make sure that we're meeting everyone's expectations from some of the feedback. And you'll see that we've done that. One thing that I did reflect on was that we're very good at finding our skills or being able to express our skills when we've been involved in an experience which has a positive outcome. And I just thought that it would be really good to have a moment to think about, some of the things that we've kind of really failed at and what I've learned from, and I can demonstrate skills that I've learned from things that I failed at. And I thought that was another interesting take. And I think feedback's kind of, quite an interesting thing as well when you get feedback from bosses, but actually we should think about feed forward and helping us to grow. And actually that comes from, working in an environment that's very supportive, which is sometimes quite rare. But I thought it would be really good just to have a little conversation with you, Ben. Can you think of an example where you've developed a skill and you can demonstrate that that's come from failure, and how does that help you to see failure as a positive thing as well? What can you demonstrate?
I mean, I certainly have plenty of failures over the years. One that kind of springs to mind is when I was heading up a department and I crafted the most beautiful curriculum. Oh, it was a thing of beauty, linked out to all the resources, but I did it all by myself. So I kind of spent about a month kind of crafting it, and then I launched it to everyone to say, look what I have created for you. And their response was very like, oh, so nice, Ben, thanks. And then obviously over the next few days and weeks as we started to get into it, you found all of the problems I hadn't anticipated. And we had to redo the whole thing. And that reflects a lot on, I talk about that a lot, because in the design work, when I'm working with people about, particularly in a design sprint, which is like a 4-day intensive problem solving activity, is that people want to kind of really craft a solution before they put it in front of people. And I'm forever saying, just get it in front of people and get it tested. One, because I learned from that experience, if I'd put a scrappy post-it note type curriculum in front of people, they could have gone, no, that goes there, I don't know why that's there, and they wouldn't have felt too precious about kind of ripping it up and starting again. Whereas because I'd spent so long on it, they were all kind of like trying to sort of massage my ego and not rip it apart. So there's a big fat failure that I refer to a lot in the work that I do now.
And actually, if I was interviewing you, Ben, for a position, I think I'd probably want to ask a question, and it would be more valid about, give me an example where you failed and you've learned from it, rather than just people churning out kind of successful projects. And I know that's a little bit of a shift in thinking, but certainly, employers might be thinking about that in terms of interview questions. And I guess sorry.
I was going to say there's a lot of employers looking very differently at skill sets now. I think I might need to be fact checked on this, but I believe Virgin have decided they're not going to ask for exam results anymore.
Correct.
So, I think people want to sort of really understand the softer skills a lot more. So it's definitely a shift in that direction.
And I thought about an example where I failed and I would exemplify. And that is, if I had to link it to a skill, it would probably be, I'm not sure, kind of critical thinking or reflection, and also adaptability. But I had a rather enthusiastic manager, and they had this great concept for a new product. And rather than having the confidence to challenge that, I kind of got caught up with the enthusiasm, and it was launched and it was a complete failure because it hadn't been thought through, it hadn't gone through processes of product design, and the boss was kind of quite hurt that it hadn't kind of been a success. And I had to kind of reflect myself, and I thought that I knew that it hadn't been thought through, and I had alarm bells inside that I should have listened to. And my takeaway from that is that I should listen to myself a little bit more and acknowledge those alarm bells. And there's nothing wrong with, if you acknowledge those alarm bells and they turn out to be complete false alarms, that you've still gone through that process. So now if I get an alarm bell before I'm launching a product, or it's like checking a blog post or checking a tweet or anything like that, I'm trying to kind of listen to myself a bit more. So that would be my example of failing forward, and it was a pretty big product as well. But that kind of brings us on to the kind of developing that further. And Ben, you were going to give us an explanation and a little insight into moonshot thinking, which is actually quite funny because it was Boris Johnson who name checked this when he was talking about COVID thinking.
Yeah, I've been talking about the concept of moonshot thinking for a while. So if anyone's familiar with the thick of it, I feel like a session similar to an event in the thick of it. Or yes, Minister, if you want to think of it that way, has happened. So moonshot thinking relates to like the original moonshot, going to the moon. At the time it seemed impossible, unimaginable. What did the technology exist? Was it even possible? And when they started to think about going to the moon, no one actually knew whether they'd be able to do it. So that's been used quite a lot for this kind of a vision of the future that you're not quite sure you can get to. Obviously, Boris kind of name checked it in relation to a life after COVID. But what it can be used for is anything that you are striving for that seems a little bit out of reach and you're not quite sure whether it's possible. But it's also been very much adopted by an organization called X. Used to be part of Google, comes under the Alphabet umbrella. And what X do is they work on pretty much like concepts that seem impossible. And the way that they do that is through the culture that they breed. So if you take Louise's example about sort of seeing potential flaws in the launch and not being quite sure where to do it, what X have done is kind of build a culture where failure is embraced. So they work on ideas that seem really, really far-fetched, that are going to involve breakthrough technology, and to have a group of people willing to put forward crazy ideas, failure has to be something that they all embrace. And they do this quite specifically in that if you are working on a project and you fail and you decide that you have tried everything out and there's nothing else you can do and you're going to kill your project, that is when you will get your bonus. So you get monetary rewards for killing your project. And obviously what that allows people to do is work on things that might seem quite impossible. So that's kind of the idea behind X. You may know some of their work. Next slide, please, Louise. If you are familiar with this kind of little Waymo self-driving cars, they're also working on projects to kind of automate farming and various different things. Project Loon is one of theirs, which is a balloon that will go up and sort of beam Wi-Fi to hard to reach areas. It was actually used during the Haitian earthquake in the aftermath of that. So they've got these projects like Project Wing that you're seeing there and Loon that have worked, but the only reason that they've been successful is because all of the other failures that they've tried out. Vertical farming is one example. It's relatively easy to vertically farm like cabbage and lettuce, but staple crops like grain, they got to a point where they tried everything and it seemed like it wasn't possible, so they killed that project and they got their bonus. So an interesting one to look at, X.company, if you want to explore that a little bit more. But the real interesting bit is the culture behind embracing failure, which allows them to do breakthrough things that are solving really big problems.
Thanks, Ben. I think that's really useful to put in that context, and how, if we can contribute to an organizational culture and sharing our failures and being happy to do that. But obviously the Critical Engineer Project is trying to help organizations to embrace that culture as well, but we all have a part to play in it. The next reflection that I wanted to talk about, and it's actually in the course today, it's something that we're starting off with, is about kind of what holds us back. And there was a really lovely piece of feedback yesterday, which was thinking about the confidence that we have that can sometimes hold us back. And this is actually really recognized as a legitimate kind of syndrome, and it's called imposter syndrome. If you've not heard of it before, there's a lot of resources about it on the web. You can just Google imposter syndrome. We can actually put some resources in, and I've linked some already, I think, actually on the course. But I think what we wanted to do is to say to people, you're on this course and we completely value your input and want each and every one of you to know that you absolutely have the skills and the confidence to go forward. And we all suffer from imposter syndrome. And I thought, and I was having a chat with Ben, as we do during the FAT before we have these sessions, and thinking about, what kind of experiences that we've had that might exemplify what it's like to have that imposter syndrome. And then that's kind of two-part, because the other part of that is what strategies, would we kind of think about adopting to kind of get over that. And if I just go first, Ben, quickly, my example is that I've done a personal one rather than a professional one, is that I absolutely love my running and I do races. I gave it up for a while and I've kind of gone back to it, but I was doing a race, a running race, and I kind of gave up halfway through because I stopped running, kind of didn't finish the race, and it was because I kind of felt like I wasn't a runner, and that, you know, other people that were running the race were, you know, proper athletes, and there was little old me kind of just jogging along, and I kind of felt really out my depth. I felt that everything was bigger than me, and yeah, that I just didn't really deserve to be there in a funny sort of way. So I didn't finish, and I came home and I really beat myself up about it. And I guess that what I learned from that is that, you know, if I am going to run races, that it isn't about you trying to beat everyone else. It's about just doing things for yourself and enjoying it. But also for me, the kind of build up to the race and the training and the social aspect of training for the race was actually more important than the race itself. And that's what I know that I love about that. So yeah, I thought that was just a simple example of when I've suffered from that. Ben, have you got any examples that you'd want to share?
Well, yeah, not through personal ones, but it comes up a lot in something that I'm working on as well. Actually, I think there's a metaphor there, isn't there, in terms of everyone has got their big race and pushing on to the end, regardless of what people may be doing around them. I know social media and a few other things came up as distractions in the first day, and I think sometimes spending time looking what other people are doing can really build that imposter syndrome. So one of my little side projects and hobbies is a podcast that I do with a friend, and it's called What Do They Do? And we just ask people kind of, you know, what they do and how they got there. And without ever expecting it to, imposter syndrome comes up all the time. And we've spoken to, you know, very successful kind of microplastic scientists. We've spoken to Google employees and all sorts of people in different realms. And imposter syndrome is one of the common themes that comes up all the time. So it increasingly seems to me that it's something that everybody has. And I'm kind of intrigued as to whether there's a balance of, like, actually to some extent imposter syndrome allows you to be reflective and never assume that you're the finished deal and that there's always work you can be doing. But at times, does that spill over into sort of self-doubt that kind of holds you back? And is there that sweet spot of kind of wanting to develop yourself, knowing that you could always improve, but still allowing yourself to try things out, finish the race no matter what is going on around you and that kind of thing? So I feel like it's something everyone has. I need to do a bit more looking into whether there's a bit more research about it rather than just based on my podcast interviews. But I wonder if it's not, you know, it's something that we can acknowledge in ourselves and go, yeah, this feels scary and hard, but for me, I'm gonna sort of go against that gut feeling to give up and stop, and I'm gonna push on through and feel that kind of benefit at the end.
Yeah, that's a really, it's nice to know, and it's a comfort to know that, you know, you're not the only one that feels like that, and it is, like you say, more common than you think. I was trying to think of some practical things, and we've put some things into the course, one of which was a book that I found really useful, which was called The Chimp Paradox, which was about listening to your own monkey that seems to be out to destroy you sometimes and being able to put it back in its box. But there are some simple things as well. I genuinely believe that you can change your own narrative, and, you know, think that you are on a journey and your story's not been told, and you can change that narrative if you want to. And just stepping away from what I'm doing, just take a break if I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed with something, or I don't feel like I'm good enough. You know, you can just step away and just take 10 minutes just to kind of reset. And I know the book gives you strategies, but sometimes I just try and think, right, you know, the day hasn't gone to I was going to swear then, hasn't gone to rack and ruin. But actually I can pull that back and think of at least 3 things that have gone well today. And for me, I actually got a good night's sleep last night. I've been waking up with the light at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've been getting up, but I thought this morning, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure I get back to sleep and get a good night's sleep. So that was my one good thing to be thankful for. So trying to just think of like little things, and I know that might sound a little bit glib, but actually, you know, it can sometimes help you to kind of bring back and put things into perspective. And then the last thing I think is that, you know, we often look at, people talk about inspirational stories, and people might, like you say, on social media, they might do a video or write a book. And actually, every single person on this course, and ourselves included, have got a story to tell if we wanted to publish it, and it would be an inspirational story. It's just that we've not chosen to do that. So don't think you haven't got an inspirational story and things that you've overcome as well. So I think that's quite a nice way of looking at it. Anyway, time is ticking on. I could talk to you all day. So just also, we've talked a lot about ourselves in the course, but remember that you are part of the organisation, and the Critical Engineer Project is about helping organisations to move forward and develop their own culture of innovation. And they should be thinking about the skills of their workforce and staff teams as well. And one thing that we've tried to emulate on this course, and we're trying to help industries and particularly companies and organisations in the Scottish manufacturing industry to think about how they create a safe space for sharing ideas as well. And we really hope that you found today and yesterday a safe place for sharing. Do continue to put your reflections into the discussions as well. And then the other part of the organisational culture that you can contribute to, which is why you are essential to any future employer, is that you will be able to contribute to their own culture of innovation. And a culture of innovation is going to help them thrive in the future. And that can only happen if you are part of it. And they've got to grow it. It's not like a strategy they pull off the shelf. It's something that they have to grow with you. And the big part of that, sorry, that's quite a busy picture, but you do have these slides. And the reason this graphic exists is because I want to show you that a culture of innovation comes from the little ideas and the kind of suggestions that come from everybody in the organisation. So everybody in the organisation has the opportunity to contribute their own little slice of genius. And that might be, you know, someone who's a pupil in a school, or it might be someone who's on the sales team, or someone from, you know, even, and this looks quite nice, Jim from accounts, or a visitor. Is that everyone's got a place to play. It's a bit like health and safety, isn't it? Everyone's got a role to play in creating a culture of innovation. And I just want to give you an example of that in action. So a lot of organisations that still had to continue said that they couldn't have meetings because of COVID. And one employee, and I think it was, you know, like an apprentice or someone that had just started at the organisation as COVID happened, was on the shop floor, and they said, actually, you know, the best place that we can have our meetings, if we can't actually sit down and do them kind of face to face in a room, is why don't we introduce the notion of a walking meeting where we go outside and get some fresh air and we walk and talk. And that way it felt like it was literally a breath of fresh air. And that company said that it actually helped the organisation to improve and get through the time of COVID. And that suggestion came from, you know, someone, grassroots reflections and contributions. And then the other one, which I think is really lovely, is that suddenly the world and their dog were moving to Zoom meetings and Zoom, you know, even family bingo, whatever. And someone on the call said, you know, instead of just going straight into business on the meetings, it would be really important to try and capture what would have been the conversations around the water cooler that we're all missing. You know, that kind of informal over the copier or visit to the coffee machine, like, hi, how's it doing? So they implemented the kind of water cooler check-in at the start of every Zoom meeting. And again, that innovation came from somebody who just wanted to say, I think we should change this, and it actually helped the organisation to get through some really tough times. So I think we've talked a lot. We've gone a couple of minutes over, but I hope this has been useful. So again, going back to meta skills, these are not the technical skills, as you know, but the skills that sometimes we don't know we have. And I really hope that through the course yesterday and continuing today, you're really able to see those skills, whether they're positive experiences or examples where you're able to demonstrate an experience in failure. And then one of the questions that came out yesterday is how you can really start trying to visualize these. And I mentioned this on the wash-up call yesterday, which was, you could create something like a visual CV, and also think about a personal CV, which is just purely for capturing and editing your reflections and skills. You could do this on a Word document. You can do it on paper. You could do it by recording a video of yourself speaking, or you could do it just by practicing and recording yourself. But also, I thought really interestingly, I'm just going to show you that these ideas about visual CVs are actually being developed as the kind of CVs of the future. And this is an institute in Florida that I've been doing some work with in Tallahassee. And this is a student, and her name is Diaya Jones. And this is kind of the CVs of the future. So what you've got here is that a picture of themselves, and then they are able to embed.
Greetings.
Can you hear that? Ben, can you hear that?
A third-year business administration scholar from Tampa, Florida, and I currently attend Florida A&M University.
I'm not going to play the whole thing, but what she's done is that she's also been able to put in little videos of little project work that she's done. She's created links out to a LinkedIn profile that has got an example of a summer project. Now, she's able to share her skills by having those snippets of those projects that she's been involved in, and she's been able to put that onto her LinkedIn profile. So I just thought that was quite helpful to think about CVs of the future. Maybe they're not going to be, just kind of static kind of bits of paper. And I kind of mentioned that to you yesterday by looking at Canva. You can look at those examples of CVs, which are a bit more kind of, multimedia. So you've got like pictures that you might want to talk about, or a picture of a project, or a picture of something. And I mentioned LinkedIn. So if you go to linkedin.com, you can create a free account. You can also put your badge that we're going to give you on your LinkedIn profile. Don't forget you're part of this project. So you can say that you've been part of the project. You can put it onto your profile, even as a job role. You can say that you're a participant in the Critical Engineer project. But also you can put the narrative there, which is so much more than just a job title. I kind of think job titles can be made up. It's the experience that matters. But on that LinkedIn profile, you could also put little snippets of experiences or projects that you've been involved in. You can take further learning modules, and you can also join communities as well if you wanted to, as there where you can talk to other people in certain industries, and you never know where it may lead. So agenda today, we've done the live introduction. The next 3 sessions, focus on what we've been talking about, what stops us, how to make sense of things, and critical thinking. Make sure you take a break. Session 4, creating your own change, part 2, and that is some of that creative thinking. And I've given you some examples there where things have been able to be changed. And there's also a bit about shouting loud, and I've just been explaining that with the kind of LinkedIn stuff and creating your own visual CV, or you're really welcome to share these with us as well. You've got our email addresses, etc. And then, of course, we'll be back on the YouTube at 3:30 with our congratulations, and also kind of any more further reflections. So Ben, over to you.
Yeah, so keep the communication coming. You'll see as you work through the 2 innovation sections that Google X and LinkedIn and Canva all referenced in there. So I'd be really interested to kind of get your reflections in the discussion about if you want to find out more about those, if there's kind of follow-up that you think you need on that to understand it better. And equally, if you're thinking about building those CVs, then we'd obviously love to hear your thoughts about where you want to build it in and how we can support you in shouting loud about that along the way. So keep the discussion comments coming. Myself and Louise will be looking at them throughout the day, and obviously replying and trying to support you with it. And there's hopefully you'll spot a few practical tips as well about kind of getting curious and some activities that you can take into your work or whatever you're working on tomorrow. Well, maybe not tomorrow.
These slides are actually posted in the live session from yesterday in a discussion. I put links to slides, so you've actually got these slides there, so you can open them and then click on the links. There's links to the Twitter. I don't know if it's very active, but you might want to have a look. The Facebook page, the YouTube account where all these videos are, and then I've just put at the bottom there Ben's LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn organization page, so we can endorse you. So we better shoot off and leave you to crack on, but it's been a real pleasure to speak to you again this morning. If you can't make the evening wash up 3:30, sorry, then watch it on the replay. But have a really fantastic day. Don't be a stranger. Leave your comments in, and if you want to ping me on my mobile or WhatsApp, then we'll arrange a one-to-one as well. So have a really great day. So in the style of two Ronnies, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him. You just need some glasses.
I have glasses. See you later, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.